Palantir stock, it's been on an absolute tear in 2023. But in the last day or so, I've seen several bearish headlines all over the media reporting about warning signs regarding Palantir's future, specifically one contract. This is something we talked about in Discord this morning, and I thought it'd be a great topic for YouTube, especially if you own shares of Palantir as a long-term investor. Wall Street analysts will come out with sell ratings, with buy ratings. It's important to understand that oftentimes there's an agenda behind it. If you own Palantir stock, or if you're considering buying shares, this video is for you. So here's one article. This is the one that was originally shared in Discord that got the conversation going. Palantir falls as analyst raises questions over Army contract renewal. So this is an analyst from William Blair and published a note on Friday, and this article here came out on Monday, speculating, the key here is speculating, on the future of a 4-year, $458 million Army contract. Two things I want you to focus on here: speculation and 4-year contract. I'm seeing different conversations on the internet about Palantir losing a $458 million contract. First of all, it's a 4-year deal. So you're looking at $100 and some odd million per year, not $458 million in 1 year. Secondly, there's no indication that Palantir is actually losing the contract. In fact, it's the opposite, and I'm going to share the details in this video. So he wrote, there's a strong indication that Palantir's renewal contract in 2 weeks will be significantly less than the original $458 million. Now, of course, people are going to fixate on $458 million and think, oh my goodness, $458 million, and they assume that in one fiscal year. That's over 4 years. And we're talking about a $40 billion market cap. So $458 million divided by 4 for the 4-year contract, it averages out to $114.5 million per year on a $40 billion company. Now, more speculation. He also said the Army might offer a 2-year renewal for $116 million, with Palantir's revenue reduced by additional vendors sharing in this deal. So divide $116 million by a 2-year contract. That's $58 million a year. Take that average from earlier, $114.5 million, minus that $58 million. It's a difference of $56.5 million a year. So the first thing I want you to focus on is that this is $56 million on a $40 billion market cap. Now, he went on further and speculated that data ownership could be an issue between the Army and Palantir. Why would he even come to that conclusion? We'll talk about it. The conversation came into it that Palantir aims to use customer data to train artificial intelligence models. And so then we go down this rabbit hole on social media and with analysts and these articles talking about, well, Army is going to cancel a $450 million contract because they're concerned about data security. None of that is true. So what is true? I'm going to give the facts. Another article here from Barron's. Palantir stock has soared this year. This issue could stop its run. So this is suggesting, again, speculation. There might be friction between Army and Palantir. And this is really talking about a presentation given by the Army last week. So the William Blair analyst is saying the tone of the comments and plan to maximize the use of open source vendors provide a strong indication that Palantir's renewal contract will be significantly less than $458 million. Well, of course it's going to be less than $458 million. That's a 4-year contract for one. But there's a lot more to this, and I'll talk about it later in the video. Definitely want to see it. So this is, again, speculation saying that the Army might give a 2-year contract that we just talked about for $116 million and build a future system with multiple vendors. Well, first of all, you have to understand what the contract was originally for, and we're going to talk about it. But the fact that Palantir's head of global communications, Lisa Gordon, had to actually say something in response to this tells you a lot. So emailed a statement that the company was concerned, so Palantir concerned with the inaccuracies in the William Blair note. There is no data ownership conflict between Palantir and the Army on Army Vantage or elsewhere. Palantir does not have or retain any ownership rights to customer data across any of our government or commercial customers. So that speculation got squashed pretty quickly. Yet traders are going to buy and sell off of these headlines without really doing much more homework into it. And at the very bottom here, it says, while the William Blair analysis focuses on a single contract, a single military government-related contract, Palantir is highly exposed to federal government contracts. And of course, it's known for defense and intelligence work. In fact, if you're not familiar, Palantir's been around since May of 2003. And I've been following this company since 2008, 12 years before it went public in 2020 through a direct listing. Another article on Yahoo Yahoo Finance. So you think about this stock up something like 180% year to date. Well, sometimes analysts are going to come out, and it could be for valuation. Here's the thing. If the analyst came out and said, hey, the stock's expensive for these reasons, here are some concerns that are legitimate and not speculation, completely different thing. I'm not making a video about it. So we're sliding today. The stock's actually starting to recover throughout the day, but this is good information to bring to you, and it confirms what we're talking about. It's just their opinion. So basically, listen to this presentation, and this is how they interpreted it. It's talking about how William Blair already had an underperform rating on the stock, and Blair is looking at other government contractors to draw the comparison here. Very traditional firms, talking about General Dynamics and Booz Allen, has nothing to do with Palantir. And the analyst saying that those companies don't have the same conflicts there because the Army owns the software systems in those cases. We already heard from Palantir in response to this. And here, this is where you can get really confused online. This is just making an assumption here too, saying, I guess the case of Palantir, that's not the case. Because some of this information you're not just going to find publicly, right? Where are you going to find all this information? How are you going to piece it together? So this article comes out and says, so I guess in the case of Palantir, that's not the case. Basically saying that there's a possible conflict with the data. But we already heard from Lisa Gordon, and she told us that's not the case. And I'm not trying to take shots here. I'm just doing my due diligence as an investor, but maybe that's why this analyst has an average return of 1.5%. Too much speculation. I don't know. But the stock's up 186% year to date. So again, valuation's one thing. Making assumptions and speculating about a presentation, that's completely different. Now, there's one key thing that I have to share with you on this video. Before I do that, let's just do a quick refresher here on Palantir to make sure we understand it. Because if we understand what Palantir is about, if we see a comment like that from an analyst, we might think twice before we believe everything we see on the internet. Palantir, I showed you earlier, founded in 2003 and really focused on government at that point. Now getting more in the commercial space. But privacy and security by design, I've talked about this on the channel before. Palantir's products are built from the ground up with security in mind from its backbone. With some companies, that's actually an afterthought. With Palantir, it's not. So they have purpose-based access controls as well as security, being able to identify who should see what data. And if you've worked in public sector or in federal, which I did 10 years in software, you know that it's not easy to get these different accreditations and compliances and clearances when you think about working with the government, public sector, federal. You've got all the ISOs on here, you've got FedRAMP, there's a bunch of them. But security is definitely the first thing in mind for Palantir because the backbone, the culture of the business is working with very sensitive data, governments, militaries, and so on, now expanding more into that commercial footprint. So AI-powered operations for every decision. AIP is the big one. I've done a video on the channel. Go check that out after this one. But you got Foundry and you've got Gotham and you've got Apollo. And we've talked about this. So Foundry, this is what enterprises, so commercial enterprises are going to use Palantir Foundry. And then you've got Gotham, which is going to be more focused on military, so with the Army and so on. And then you've got Palantir Apollo, and this is a scalable platform for managing and deploying software. Now, if you haven't worked in software, some of this can be confusing because you hear on-prem, you hear cloud, you hear hybrid cloud, what's going on? I'm going to get to that in a second. We got the money shot. We're going to look at the 10Q and break a couple things down. Before I do that, let's understand the Army contract. So this is from December of 2021. Army Vantage reaffirms Palantir partnership for a third consecutive year with a $116 million agreement. Now, of course, everything you're going to see is that $458 million contract. Well, first of all, it's $458 million and it's over 4 years, and it wasn't a guaranteed 4 years. Palantir was awarded $110 million at the time, so at the start for the base year, and then $113.8 million in December 2020 for the first option year. So essentially, this is a 1-year contract, and it had 3 years worth of options, which is why this headline is telling you that they renewed the partnership for a third consecutive year. So that fourth year is coming up and they're going to need to negotiate a new contract. So what is Army Vantage? It's designed for speed, flexibility, and impact, turning insights into actions and AI into outcomes faster than any other system. I'd actually talked to somebody who worked in the Army that used Palantir and raved about how awesome it was to use it. Built for the entire Army, all Army personnel, easily discover and interact with dashboards and data insight tools spanning every domain of the Army. So when we've talked about Palantir on the channel before, we're taking data from all these different sites, disparate siloed data, all this data from organization, and putting it into one repository where people can extract that data as analytics and use that real-time data. And that's going to help you make better decisions, be more effective and more efficient. And you can put permission controls to decide who can see what data by its restriction. The other thing too with Palantir is people fixate on on SaaS. A lot of people know what a SaaS company is, software as a service, and they just assume that they're all kind of created equal. Like CrowdStrike is just like Palantir, and that Snowflake is like those, and they're all different. Snowflake's consumption-based. CrowdStrike is a true SaaS built in the cloud, for the cloud, very limited services. Palantir is often doing multi-year contracts, so it's a little bit different. And a lot of times services are baked into those contracts. I'll explain. So this is the U.S. Army Global Force Information, kicks off phase 2 of data platform development. And at the very bottom here, it talks about the businesses it's using. So it says here, includes New Wave Solutions LLC, Big Bear AI, which is why this became kind of a meme stock for a little while, I think, and then Palantir USG. So looking at the research on this, Big Bear won some of that contract work, and they had to partner through Palantir because Palantir had the authorization, the contracts. This is something you see oftentimes in public sector and federal. Like, I want to do a deal with the University of California system, but I don't have a procurement vehicle, they say, to get the job done. So I'll go to somebody else that has a procurement vehicle and I'll pay them some points. So I might pay them 10% to allow me to go underneath their contract. They're taking 10% just for having the procurement vehicle. We're doing the work. And some of that is this way with this partnership between these three companies. And so the argument from the William Blair Analysts is talking about how open source, how they're going to start using more open source tools. Well, what did Palantir actually do in the first place? So the Army Vantage platform was designed to enable users to make data-driven decisions, allowing the Army to leverage its data as a strategic asset. Palantir's continued partnership with the Army since the platform's launch has helped generate and integrate over 30,000 unique data sets from over 160 distinct systems. So distinct is a kind word for basically disparate data, just data that's not very useful. You got data laying over here and over there, and none of it's really talking to each other, and you can't extract it in one dashboard. You talk about garbage in and garbage out when you think of analytics. You've got to have good data, and you have to have all the data. If you're just extracting data from one section of the company, it's not really giving you a full picture. So for example, the Army might use Palantir to not only, we like to talk about, threat detection and, finding terrorists and things like that, but an everyday real use case. It could be, how much 50 cal ammunition do we have across the United States or across the globe or a specific region? Palantir can help the Army do that and accurately get that information quick on a dashboard so the person that should see it has clearance to see it. But what I want you to focus on here, though, 30,000 data sets and 160 distinct systems. So who do you think did all that work? Do you think that Palantir probably had a big part of that there was a lot of effort to make that happen? And this is just, there's been more work since this. This is from the third consecutive year. So if you look at year to date, it's even larger. But let's just use this number, 30,000 unique data sets and 160 different systems pulling all that data together. This is from the 10Q. We generate revenue from the sale of subscriptions to access our software in our hosted environment, along with ongoing operating and maintenance OEM services, Palantir Cloud. But it's not just this. It's a lot of times people just think SaaS and that's it. Also, software subscriptions in our customers' environments with ongoing O&M services, on-prem software, and professional services. So this is saying that they have basically their own cloud where you can do software as a service. You can actually subscribe to the software and put it on-prem into your own databases so you can protect and secure the data the way you want to. And they also offer professional services. Well, what does that mean if you haven't worked in software? Professional services could be the consulting, helping extract all that data and making that data work in one system. The Army might not have the IT capabilities to do that. In most cases, they don't. Even large enterprise, businesses that have huge IT teams, they're going to need help from a consulting partner or from the software vendor itself. And a lot of times Palantir will even leverage outside services companies. So you could see a Deloitte consultant that's working under a Palantir hat, but basically being, we used to call it pimping out, but basically leasing, one asset, one consultant from a source to another. And in software, I've seen it where somebody could work for one company and be leased out by 3 other companies. Basically, there's, everybody's taking a little bit of a cut. And so it goes from $100 an hour to $200 an hour for that consultant. And so we could go down a whole rabbit hole here, but the focus that I want to get across here is that it's not just software as a service. And when you look at software subscriptions in the on-prem environment, I think it's safe to say that Army probably uses a hybrid approach. There's certain things that are way more restrictive that aren't going to be in another person's cloud, and they're going to manage it on-prem. And even the data that is being used in Palantir that's loaded into Palantir's cloud, when you think of Apollo being leveraged, well, we already know that they're not using that data. So they're not going to share or resell that data elsewhere. But we don't have, I'm sure it's confidential. We don't have the exact details on this, but I'd be willing to bet that Army uses a hybrid approach. And so this is talking about Palantir Cloud. This is subscription services. And I think most people just assume that's all Palantir is. It's just Palantir Cloud, software as a service, but also the on-prem software. So they basically, again, they sell the software subscription. It's still a subscription, but they sell it as a subscription, but the customer basically can use the intellectual property, the software of Palantir, and use it on their own cloud instance. In other words, in their own on-prem database servers. And this is the big one here, professional services. Our professional services support the customer's use of the software and include, as needed, on-demand user support, user interface configuration, training, data modeling, support, and so on. Professional services contracts typically include the provision of on-demand professional services for the duration of the contractual term. These services are typically coterminous. Now, what's funny is this was posted in Discord, and Dave said, I had to look up the word. He Googled the word. I asked my wife, who's in the other room, and she works in software contracts, and I said, what is coterminous? And she just off the top of her head says, oh, it's when you take the contract, blah, blah. She just rattled off like a 2-minute explanation. So you can tell that she does this stuff, right? So you look at this. So Palantir Cloud or on-premises software subscriptions. Professional services are on demand, whereby we perform services throughout the contract period. Therefore, the revenue is recognized over the contractual term. What this is telling you in English is that Army has a $458 million contract, but it's over 4 years. And of that $115 million a year, it's including professional services. Those services are needed to basically do what the Army wanted to do. Take all that data from different locations and make it work. Once that's done, that work is done, those services aren't needed. So of course the contract is going to be less because there's less work to do. Now all they need to do is actually pay for the software, and there's no other services that are really needed. Maybe some services, but on a much lighter basis than this huge workload over a 4-year period. And if you understand all that, it makes this a heck of a lot easier to comprehend and to make a decision. Because at the end of the day, I'm here to provide information, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this analyst knows way more about Palantir than I do, but I'm going to share my perspective. At the end of the day, it's about providing data, finding facts. This is on a 10Q to help you understand these companies and make your own decisions with your money. Want more videos? If you're new here, subscribe to the channel, click that bell to get notifications so you don't miss the next video that comes out. If this video is helpful, drop me a like, drop me a comment. I appreciate your time and attention. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.